If you could look into the future, what would you see about the United States? That things would go great or not? In a moment, we're talking about upside. Kenneth Gronbach joins us with his incredible work next on Coast to Coast AM. Okay, welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Kenneth Gronbach is the president of KGC Direct. It's an internationally respected demographer who's been able to forecast societal, commercial, economic, cultural, political phenomena with really uncanny accuracy. Ken's unusual blending of marketing savvy and common sense demography based on 20-plus years of proprietary demographic study sets him apart. He keynotes all over the United States and does specialized demographic research as well. His work, Upside, profiting from the profound demographic shifts ahead. We're gonna talk about the future of you and me in the United States. Ken, welcome to the program.
Good to be here.
Okay. I noticed your forward was by John Zogby, and I know John. I know his brother Jim well. I was on a couple committees with Jim back in the 80s, and Zogby and his polling, pretty darn accurate, my friend, isn't it?
He's the one that he actually got Trump.
Yes.
He was like in that 20% they got it right.
You're really right. He does his homework, and he does it well. He lives by demographics.
Yeah, he does, and he's a very astute man. We had the privilege of speaking together, I believe in Wisconsin, to a healthcare organization, and so I really enjoyed my time with him. He's a very brilliant man. Tell
us a little bit more about you than just the bio, because you got into this a long time ago, and you're the best at what you do. How did this all start for you?
Well, we lost an account. I had a marketing company in Connecticut, my wife and I did, that was doing quite well, and we had American Honda as a client.
Okay.
American Honda motorcycles. And we had 140 dealers that we represented from the tip of Maine to Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., the whole Northeast region. And the Japanese would send us the bikes. They'd be put in the dealerships. They'd be prepped. We'd run, millions of dollars worth of advertising in the spring of the year, and we'd sell out to the piece until 1986. And a very strange thing happened in 1986. We put the bikes in the dealerships. We did everything that we normally do. We ran really, really cool ads, and I got a call from American Honda. American Honda said to me, Ken, did you run the ads? And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, it's like somebody turned a faucet off. He said, the only consolation for you is that Kawasaki, Suzuki, and Yamaha all have the same problem. He said, and I said, what's that? And he says, nobody's coming into the dealerships.
And you're shocked, right?
Yeah, well, I was stunned, and I said, whoa, you got to be kidding. And he said, yeah, you want another one? He said, this archaic oil-leaking slug of a bike called Harley Davidson is selling. He said, what is going on? And I said, I really don't know. So they actually sent a elite contingent over from Japan. Really.
Were they panicking?
Say again?
Were they panicking, Ken?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course they were panicking.
Yeah.
They studied the problem, and initially they said, well, the prices on the bikes are too high. So we reduced the price on our signature product, which was the Nighthawk 750, which was selling for $6 and change. They reduced it to $39.99, which is like,
gosh, that's nothing for a bike.
Wicked low.
Yeah.
And we sold a few, and then they said, well, we're not doing the right product. So then they started designing their bikes after the Harley, and we went into the scooter business, and neither of those saved us. By 1992, the sale of Japanese brands, Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, and Yamaha fell 80%.
Whoa!
And the dealers all closed. I mean, literally, if they weren't selling outboard motors or lawnmowers or cars, they were out of business.
Right.
All the Honda motorcycle dealers, for the most part, just simply closed. And so we shook hands with American Honda, and we said, well, I guess that's it. And they didn't know why. We didn't know why. There was a lot of speculation, but nobody had any real concrete answers.
At this point, would you say it was a Buy American surge with Harley?
No.
It was not that.
No. What had happened to us was far simpler than that. 1996. I'm in my office in Connecticut, and we're because we're a marketing company, we're doing about $40 million. I have 40 people working for me. We're doing very well as a regional agency.
And this is your big account, right? Honda's your big account? Well,
Honda was one of the big. It hurt us to lose the account.
Yeah.
It really did. Because I don't know if you've ever done business with the Japanese, but they pay by return mail, and they're very, very easy to do business with.
Yes.
But every year that we did business with them, they just increased our quota by 10%. So they just it was an assumption you're going to sell more.
Just automatic. Boom.
And we did up until 1986. So now it's 1996. So I'm reading a full-page editorial in the Hartford Courant, which is a big newspaper here in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And it's October of the year. It's Clinton versus Dole. We're in the politics is really heating up in the media, and there's a full-page editorial indicting Generation X. Now, Generation X was born 1965 to 1984. Now, just back up just a little bit. As a demographer, we look at generations in comparable 20-year intervals.
Okay.
Just so we can compare them. So the baby boomers were born 1945 to 1964. The next generation right after the baby boomers was born 1965 to 1984. And it was saying that this new generation was a bunch of lazy, slacker, couch potato people that, and the writer of the editorial didn't understand why they were not involving themselves in the political process. They were not voting at the level of the boomers.
Mm-hmm.
They were not giving money at the level of the boomers. They were not running for office at the level of the boomers. They were not devoting any time at the level of the boomers. And what was the United States going to come to if this new generation was our future? Because they're so terrible. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck is this? I mean, what kind of journalism is this? Has he done homework on these people? And
does this come out again prior to the motorcycle slowing down in sales or after?
This is fully 4 years after we parted with American Honda.
Okay.
Yeah. The crash began in 1986. It was done in 1992.
Okay.
4 years later, I made this discovery. So here's what I did. I didn't believe the editorial. It just struck me because I had 40 people working for me. 30 of them were Gen Xers, and I didn't have any lazy people. So I called in our research department, which was one brilliant young guy, and I said, "Listen, I want you to do a deep dive on the people that are born 65 to 84. I want to know everything about them because it's." There was a book out by Kenneth Copeland called Gen X, and in the book he called them slackers. And it was very popular to call this generation entitled and lazy. But it didn't follow for me. So he went off and did his study, came back a few days later and said, into my office, and I said, okay, let me have it. And he said, well, I looked in statistical abstracts, I looked in census data, I looked in CIA fact book, I looked in Bureau of Labor Statistics. I got all the research that's already been done on this generation. And he said, they're never going to perform at the level of the boomers. And I said, so they're substandard, they're lazy. And he said, no, there's fewer of them. And it was like, and I'm looking and I'm saying, what? And he said, yeah. He says, Ken, there just were fewer of them born. He said, between 1965 and 1984, our fertility dropped like a stone. He said there was this whole thing. First of all, there was this mentality of zero population growth.
Right.
And people just had fewer kids. He said, if you take a look at the baby boomers, the peak of the baby boomers in 1957 was 4,300,000 babies. 1957. That's why. And let's come back. We'll come back to that date because that's an important date. The trough of Generation X was 1974 with 3 million babies. So do the math. I mean,
why were things going down instead of up in terms of population?
I mean, in terms of population?
Yeah.
In terms of babies? I believe it had a lot to do with the parents. And I'm not being facetious.
Like this Chinese mentality now.
No, it was different than that. if you look at the generations in the United States, and I only go back to 1905 to 1924. I mean, that's the first generation that I deal with in
what were they called?
That I write, and that's called the GI generation.
Okay.
They were really an elite group, and they were there was about close to 57 million indigenous people born in that period in the United States, 1905 to 1924. But we got another 15 million that came to the United States as immigrants.
Immigration.
In that generation. So that generation was huge. It was 70 million. Big generation. The generation right after it, born 1925 to 1944, for a couple of reasons. One, the Great Depression, and then two, the war. There was no immigration, zero. So it was only the people that were born here, and there were only about 50 million people born here. Because I guess people cut their fertility during the Depression.
They were depressed. You would think it would have gone up.
Well, no, like more free time. Huh?
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't work that way. Yeah, so the Generation X, born 65 to 84, their parents were the silent generation, born 1925 to 1944. So it was a small group of parents, small number of kids. It was, that kind of simple. So once we discovered that Generation X was small, in describing their abilities to accomplish things, my researcher said, Ken, it would be like a football team where one team was allowed to have 9 players and one team was allowed to have 11 players, and the team with 11 players always won. Is it because they're better players? He said, no, it's just that there's not enough of them.
Those with most consume more, obviously.
Exactly. Well, and go back to 1957. In 1957, we had 4,300,000 babies born in the United States. The team that beat the Russians in hockey was born in 1957. It's talent pool. So once you start understanding a critical mass of humans, you can make some very accurate assumptions
about things, about the future,
about what they're going to consume and so forth. Listen, I tend to ramble here. I don't know when you need to take breaks.
You're with me for 3 hours, so don't worry about it. And when the time comes for a break, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, let me tell you about Generation X then. So I suddenly discovered that Generation X is 11% smaller. It's missing 9 or 10 million people when compared to the baby boomers.
That's huge.
Yeah, well, it's beyond huge. And I know from a marketing standpoint that I said, I think we just discovered what happened to motorcycles. And sure enough, we did the math, and what we discovered was the baby boomers exited the very narrow demo that we sold that we sold bikes to, and that was men 16 to 24 years old. We didn't sell it. We didn't sell Japanese bikes to people in their 30s because it was a death wish, and
yeah, exactly.
It was a young man's product. They were wicked fast. Even back then, it was 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. I mean, really, really deadly bikes. So we sold bikes to men 16 to 24. Once the baby boomer, the huge block of baby boomers exited that very narrow demo, it was over. And
you didn't have the replacements coming in.
No, they simply weren't. The people right behind them. Our dealers were all, because they were franchises, were on 5% after-tax profit, and that was the good ones. So when you cut your market by 11%, you're done.
You're done. Your business is over.
Yeah, you can't. There's nothing you can do about that. You can't fix that. And so that's we said, whoa. That, and then we thought, this research guy, and I got to tell you, George, this consumed me. I'm a marketer, and I'm thinking,
it's fascinating marketing data.
Yeah, we just made a discovery that's going to stop clocks. I said, let's take a look at what else Generation X has done, and we went back and started from when they were born, and they closed maternity wards. Throughout the United States, maternity wards in cities consolidated. If there were hospitals, everybody had a maternity ward for the boomers. didn't need it for this new generation. So they either did away with it or they consolidated with another hospital and didn't need it. Generation X almost shut down the toy industry. Do you remember Toys R Us?
Oh, yeah, look what happened. They got hit hard.
They got hammered. I don't want to grow up. I want to be a Toys R Us kid. That jingle resonated with the baby boomers. But when the baby boomers exited the toy buying years, or the years when they used toys, this generation clobbered the toy industry. And then we looked at public schools. They closed.
I was just going to bring that up. I was looking at my old, because tomorrow night I may have my teacher on the air who told us that John F. Kennedy was assassinated when I was 13. And I found her. And she said, I found her, I got her phone number, and she says she's going to pop on for a little bit. It's the 100th anniversary of JFK's birthday. But while I was doing this research tonight, Ken, I noticed that my school district that I grew up in as a kid years ago closed 2 or 3 schools in that district because there weren't enough kids.
That's exactly correct. And do you know how few people, George, even have a concept of that? Now, boards of education do. I can remember about 3 or 4 years ago, I was invited to a board of education meeting inside of a new school, a brand new school that the town, of course, is paying for.
Yeah.
And they brought me in and said, well, what do you think of the school? And I said, it's really great, but you didn't need it.
You have no kids to come here, right?
I said, because they're in 7 or 8 years, there's not going to be any population to fill this school. I mean, it might come back again at 20 years, but you didn't need to build this school now. You can't imagine how many jaws dropped when I said that. I said, so you people really don't check the census?
This is interesting.
We discovered that the Generation X closed schools. They shut down bicycles. They shut down motorcycles. And in 2008, when the baby boomers were ready to sell their starter castles, and that they had refinanced several times, get their equity and get out,
the bottom falls out.
Yeah. Well, what happened was it was very simple, because all of a sudden you had a critical mass of baby boomers ready to sell their houses, and they turned around to the generation behind them and said, "Buy our house." And for every 10 houses for sale, there were 8 buyers, and over she went.
That's an interesting stat. My gosh.
Yeah, and George, that's only scratching the surface.
Did that generation at all consume much of anything?
No.
There was
Detroit. Get this.
My hometown.
The most profitable vehicle ever produced by Detroit is a SUV. SUV, sport utility vehicle, is nothing more than a truck with nice upholstery that you can sell for twice the price.
With a cover on the back. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. It's like we're all driving trucks now. The rigid suspensions, rear-wheel drive. Anyway, the Detroit could not figure out why they couldn't sell the same number of SUVs to Generation X that they had sold to the boomers. And I watched this, this thing unfolded before my eyes, because I'm watching Detroit fire their ad agencies, because, we keep our finger on the pulse.
Hold on for a second, Ken. We are at a break, and we'll come right back for more on Coast to Coast AM. Our luncheon series continues. The next one is Tuesday, June 27th, with Afterlife expert Rich Martini. Just send full information with your phone number to lunchwithgeorge@gmail.com, and you will be gotten right back to with information. Lunchwithgeorge@gmail.com, Tuesday, June 27th. Afterlife expert Rich Martini. In a week or two, I'll tell you about the events in July as well for most of you. Welcome back. Kenneth Gronbach with us. Ken, I guess we should also mention M.J. Moy is one of your writers as well with this book, Upside.
He's a researcher, lives in Nova Scotia.
Okay, great. So we were talking about SUVs. What's happening there?
Well, the sale of SUVs dropped like a stone, just like motorcycle sales dropped like a stone. When the market for SUVs, according to research, the best customer for a brand new vehicle from Detroit is a 41-year-old married male. And when that particular category, that age, that demo, that filled up by a diminutive population generation called Generation X, sales fell. But they're restoring now. So it's if you can imagine a parade. You know, today was a day of parades in most places, not in Connecticut because it rained, but you have people that are at the fairgrounds that are staging. There are some that are already in line marching towards you, and sometimes there's a marching band, and sometimes there's a very few people, and then there's another marching band. That's pretty much the way the population is in the United States. Populations are large populations followed by small populations, followed by large populations. So you can calculate the consumption of generations just simply by their size.
Are they going up or down now?
Well, we have in the United States what's called a barbell demography, and that is the folks that are currently 13 to 32, Generation Y, or millennials, is the largest generation in the history of the United States. The most people ever born in a 20-year span. There's 86 million of them. The generation that is 33 to 52, Generation X, is tiny. They're cruising at about 65, 70 million.
Okay.
The generation that is 53 to 72, baby boomers, is huge. It's 80 million people.
Yeah.
So we have a big crop of people about to retire and a big crop of people about to enter the labor force and start households.
But for that age, I'm a baby boomer. I'm in there. You I guess, have to pinpoint certain products for the age because
of course
there are things, for example, at my age, I'm not going to buy a motorcycle, even though the population is huge. So I guess what they try to target, experts like you, are specific products based on the market size and the age.
That's exactly correct. Yeah, when we look, what we did in the book is we broke down the specific generations, and we dealt with all of them. We dealt with the GI generation, the silent generation, the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and of course the newly forming Generation Z.
And the earlier ones are about 16 years old, right?
The Generation Y is 13 to 32. Those are people born 1985 to 2004. Largest generation in the history of the United States. And we're the only industrialized nation and the only world power that has a generation like this. So, which is why manufacturing is going to, come back to the United States, because we now have an indigenous labor force that's huge.
And Generation Z starts when?
Generation Z is 2005.
Okay.
And they'll go to 24.
So the earlier ones are 12 years old. Is there any way to predict how many of them are being born at this point?
Sure. Well, it was very easy, yeah.
Is that up or down?
No, it's actually right now it's down, but that's to be expected. The largest year that we've ever had in the United States was 2007. There were 4,316,000 babies born in 2007. 25% of them were Latinos. And so I tell folks, I said, you want to collect Social Security? Yeah. I said, well, go find a Latino, kiss him on the lips, and thank him for coming, because without the Latinos, we don't have a country in
Interesting.
40 years. I mean, we just don't. And Latinos, I don't think we could design a better immigrant. They assimilate in 20 years. They're speaking less Spanish. Pew has them on the bottom rung socioeconomically right now, but that's only because they're last in, and they're wonderful, wonderful immigrants. And
they're hard workers too.
Oh, big time. They did not come here to collect welfare. They came here to work.
Yeah.
And get this, you want a little anecdote here?
Interesting.
We had probably 40 million of them that came into the country, and they came in for a reason, and that was as the baby boomers matured and demanded service, demanded being waited on at McDonald's, demanded having their lawns mowed. Immigrants poured in from Mexico, but now we have our own indigenous entry-level labor force that was born here. So probably about 20 million Mexicans have gone back, and they continue to go back. They're leaving us in far larger numbers than are coming in. So if Trump builds that wall, he's actually going to trap them in.
Trap them in, indeed. So let me ask you this, Ken, with what's happening. Social networking.
Yeah.
Facebook, they're doing billions of dollars in sales. And I got to tell you, I don't know anybody who has bought a specific product on Facebook. How does that happen?
I don't know. It's a very good question. If you're asking me one of my biases, and this would be subjectivity. I consider the internet marketing to be a bottomless pit.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to measure it, and there's no way to know the only way that you can tell if you're getting what you're paying for is by return on investment.
A direct return.
Are you selling something?
That's right.
Are you actually selling what you're advertising?
Amazon knows. You go to Amazon, you buy something, they know they've sold it. I can understand that. But Facebook, these ads pop up. I don't know if anybody's buying anything. I don't think anybody's ever bought a car by looking at Facebook or anything else.
I'll give you some more subjectivity.
All right.
I like, the Zuckerberg kid. I mean, he's done very well.
Genius.
Yeah, well, he's genius, I guess, he was Harvard. He wasn't Yale, and he didn't finish. But he did come back and speak. If you look at his history, and then you look at the company, and you look at the numbers that he's putting out that they claim people are viewing, are viewing Facebook. He just recently had to concede that he overestimated by about 80% the number of people that were online with Facebook.
Jeez. And did his stocks reflect that? Did his stock plummet by 80%, though?
No, nothing. No, it didn't. But I would just caution your listeners that if they're using online media for marketing, to be very, very careful.
Nothing like good old radio and television.
Well, there's certainly a demo listening to this show right now. There's a demo that watches TV. There's a demo that reads the newspaper, and it's older. I have two Gen Y kids. I have a 22-year-old and a 24-year-old. Two girls, and they've never read a newspaper ever.
No, and they might be more apt to listen to this show on their smartphone.
Maybe so, yeah.
But they're out there. They're growing. They're learning. You say that the best days for the United States are ahead of us, not behind us. And so many other people I hear say, you know what, it's not going to be a rosy future. So you have a different outlook. How come?
Totally.
Based on these statistics.
And I'll give you my reason for that.
All right.
And it's numeric. It's not because it's not blind faith. We, as a nation, in contrast to the European Union, almost all of the European Union nations, all of Eastern Europe, Russia, and Asia, do not have fertility issues. We had kids, and we continue to have kids.
We're healthy. Things work.
We're healthy. If you don't have children, it's only a matter of time before you lose your culture and you lose your country. It's very simple. What's happening in Japan right now? Japan is not only are they not having kids, they're not marrying. They're not having relationships. I mean, human beings are having relationships with automation.
Robots.
Yeah, how about that? Robots don't have kids.
They don't have kids.
We are the only...
And they don't buy things.
No, they don't. The United States is the only industrialized nation and the only world power that has a Generation Y, that in proportion to the rest of its population. We have a monster population, the largest population that we have ever produced. 86 million, and they're 13 to 32. They're getting married late. They are finally moving out of their parents' basements. They're throwing away all those trophies that they didn't deserve, and they're going to start households. Now, follow me on this, because we're going to do a little math together. There are roughly 330 million people in the United States. When you count the illegals, and we do because they're here. Now, we're not taking a position on them. We're just telling you they're here. There are 155 million housing units in the United States, and that would include everything from a freestanding house to apartment buildings to condos to trailers to whatever people are living in, apart from tents. And the two largest parts of our population, the baby boomers and their kids. Now you got 80 million baby boomers, and because they were that number, their numbers were added to by immigration, and their kids, 86 million, are living together. The kids are finally moving out, and they're finally moving out because the housing crisis is over, and their parents can leave the labor force, access their equity, and do what they're going to do, be the largest generation ever to retire. Here's how it works. Unless we build 25 million new structures, new housing units, these kids are going to sleep on the ground.
And what apartment unit would be called a unit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So 25 million of them.
Where we physically don't have enough places for them to live. So housing is going to spike. It has to, unless these kids are going to live outside.
And they're not going to do that.
No, they're not going to live outside, and they're going to be fine. Don't worry about that. And they grow up. You know, people say, "Well, these kids are so dependent on their parents, and they're entitled." And I said, "Listen, do you remember hippies?"
Oh yeah,
and that's a question. Yeah, of course you do,
absolutely.
Right? And we grew up in a hippie culture. Where are the hippies now? They grew up.
They grew up. They're not hippies anymore.
No, they grew up.
They're us.
The Republicans and the conservatives.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's what. Don't worry about this generation. It's going to be fine. Housing is the economy. The economy is housing. Once these kids, once houses are, just the fact that houses are going to be built for them is going to spike the economy. But then, in addition to that, they're starting households. Do you think there's going to be more dish soap sold?
Yep.
How about more washing machines?
Yep.
How about couches?
Yep.
Yes.
TVs.
Yes.
Everything.
Keep it going. And on top of that, we have manufacturing coming back to the States. So it's all, I mean, do I think things are going to get better in the United States? There isn't a single demographic issue that doesn't point towards.
Well, let me ask you this, Kenny. There's a certain age group that is more apt for civil unrest. They protest in the streets. Some of them riot. Some of them break buildings and glass, and throw Molotov cocktails. It happens primarily with a certain age. I saw it up in Florissant, Missouri, a couple of years ago. You didn't have a lot of older people doing that. They were younger people. So my question is if you have a lot of younger people in a population growth, are you going to be more apt for civil unrest as well? And do you need to plan for that?
You would, except it would have already happened. This particular generation, if you recall, I mean, I'm older than you.
How old are you?
I'll be 70.
All right, you are older than me.
Yeah.
Old man.
And thank God. I mean, I 70, everything beyond that's a bonus. I thank God that I'm alive.
That's right. Every day.
Yeah, you get you do read the obituary page every day.
As long as your name is not in it, you're okay.
Oh, yeah, but there's so many people that I know.
I just lost one. One of my favorite guests passed away, 66 years old. Died a couple days ago. It's unbelievable.
Well, there's an axiom in demography, and that is the longer you live, the longer you live.
Yeah.
If you can get past your middle 60s, you're going to 80, guaranteed. So it's.
Well, 60 is the new 50 these days.
Listen, 70 is the new 50
in terms of attitude. That's right. I'll give you that. So what you're saying though is the group that would be more apt to protest, demonstrate, that is smaller than some of them in the past.
No, it's actually larger, but it didn't happen.
But they've grown out of that stage.
No, well, it just simply didn't happen. Let me bring it even down to a baser level. Crime is committed by men 15 to 30.
All right, I agree with that.
It's crime. Yeah, 15 to 30. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're in an African country or China, wherever. That's when the juices are flowing. and it's men, not women. And men are 10 times more likely to commit a crime than a woman. 10 times.
Okay.
How do I know that?
Good statistic.
We have 200,000 women in jail, and we have 2 million men in jail.
All right, good point.
Yeah, so if you're worried about an era of protest in the United States, we'll see some of it. But if it was going to happen, it would have already. We're seeing some, and we're seeing it in all the usual suspects, Berkeley and.
What if you were a political candidate? What would you be doing in terms of who you'd be going after to try to get their vote? This is where Zogby comes in.
Yeah, I would go after the boomers, and I would go after. Well, see, it actually breaks down into 4 basic categories. One, baby boomers, and mostly white. And then Generation X, which is significantly white, but augmented by Latinos. And Latinos are now, there are roughly, I think, 60 million people in the United States that are Latino or of Latino descent. Do you know we're mostly German? There's roughly, and there are, but Germans, immigrants came here, over 100 years ago. So I would go after boomers. I would go after Latinos. I would go after the Generation X, and of course, you're going to have to appeal to this new monster generation called Gen Y or millennials. And as soon as the millennials start to amass some wealth, they'll be a lot less liberal and much more conservative.
And what time period were the millennials?
Millennials are currently 13 to 32. They were born 1985 to 2004.
Okay, yeah, my granddaughter's right in the middle of that.
Yeah,
she's right there.
They're a wonderful generation. They're cyber. They eat, sleep, and drink cyber. They're my daughters.
And they know it, and they know it well.
They dance all around me on my computer. It's mysterious to me. I tell a story that when I was writing this the book, The Upside, it's bouncing off of 60,000 words. I'm wrapping it up, and I didn't back up anything because I don't think real men should. Which is really smart. My
mother is a part of the silent generation. She was born in 1929. She's 88 years old now. Do advertisers sell to 88-year-olds? Do they even develop product for them?
Pharmaceuticals.
That's it. Interesting take.
Pharmaceuticals and stair glides.
We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back for a couple more hours to go. We'll open up phone lines a little bit later on as well. Kenneth Gronbach, my special guest. His book is called Upside, and we'll be back with more on Coast to Coast AM.